Welcome to another You Comment, We Respond. First up, we have the Grinder. Finally has it. Can he get paid? Click right up there to check that out. That hand was weird. Right?
Yeah.
The way that hand played out was weird. There were some very questionable decisions. It was very near the bubble on an EPT, or the PCA, I think it was even. Some guy under the gun has ace-queen and opens. I think his name's like George St. Clair, George St. Pierre.
He's a garbage human.
Something of some type.
State something.
For some reason, Joel Mika decides the under the gun opener is the guy I want to attack right now with 7-8 offsuit. And in the hijack, he 3-bet 7-8 offsuit. The grinder with 2 jacks on the button just calls. Ace-queen folds somehow. I don't know how that happened or why. It's the coolest flop of all time. I mean, almost. It's it's Jack 8-8. So Mika flops trips, the grinder flops top boat. Somehow it goes check check. Yeah. What the hell? What just happened? I don't know. Turns a 10 of spades, bringing a second spade. Mika now bets. Grinder raises small. Mika calls. River's a deuce of spades, means the flush comes in. Mika checks. Grinder goes almost all in for almost all of Mika's stack.
He bets 160. Mika has 214 left.
And Mika ultimately finds a fold, and that's how that went.
Yeah. So Jameson Whitman says, I don't know why the assumption is if Grinder had air, he'd always bet the flop. Maybe it's a good idea to check the flop in position with your air because checking back removes a lot of pure bluffs from his range and shows he at least has a hand with some showdown value, if not a monster like he has. I guess my point is, if he's going to attempt and successfully sell an elaborate bluff at some point later in the hand, isn't it in his benefit to check back the flop? When you do attempt that bluff, it just seems super strong because why not fire on the flop if you're bluffing?
I mean, those are some reasonable points.
They are, but let's remember, Grinder called a 3-bet cold. He's got what looks like to be a real hand here, right? So I don't think he has to not. I think he should absolutely bet his strength and his weakness here.
These are good points as well, Jonathan. Well done. Although I like the way that this person is thinking. Yeah. They're thinking about different ways to bluff that make more sense, telling a good story, right?
I agree.
Even if you're right, and let's not assume that you might be, you might not, that it's a good idea to check back here sometimes. I kind of agree with Jonathan that you should probably bet when you miss if you're Grinder because it looks like you have a pretty big hand. Even if you're right here, I don't think the Grinder is doing that. I think Grinder's always betting when it's checked to him and he doesn't have anything. He can't help himself.
We've watched the Grinder play many, many, many times, and he kind of never checks back on this spot, except, oh, I guess he had a full house, so he checked.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Maybe if he has like very moderate showdown value, he might check that too, but even that he usually bets.
Like 2 6s or 2 7s, something like that maybe?
If you have a bluff, it's not a bad idea. I like the idea of telling a good story, but it's not a bad idea to start telling the story as soon as possible so you can get as much fold equity as possible, right?
Right.
So we can start to threaten Joel Mika's stack as soon as possible because we are right on the bubble, excuse me, very close to it. Anyway.
He's also on the button. He's
on the button and we are on the bubble.
Yeah.
So put those two things together, it's pretty sweet.
You got all the B words.
I mean, come on.
Perfect.
All right, let's move on.
All right, next hand is he shoved with what?
With what?
How'd that one go, Jonathan?
Oh, gosh. Okay,
all right, well, I can do it.
I can do it. Dominic Nitsche opens on the button with the 4-5 of spades. I did it. I got
spades.
It. I don't know this guy's first name, but Miss Leamy.
Yeah, Miss Leamy.
Calls in the big blind with 2 deuces. The flop is a fairly coolish flop. It's the deuce 3 8 2 diamond board. Nitsche continues with his open-ended straight draw. Miss Leamy raises. It's like small though. It's like 22K. Miss Leamy raises to 50K. Dominic calls.
Yep.
The turn I'm going to need help with.
7 of spades.
It's a brick-ish card.
7 of spades.
Miss Leamy means to bet 60,000, I think, but Dominic calls him out because it's a string bet, and they force it to only be 30,000. Dominic's now getting a great price. He can call again. He does.
Calls with his open end.
The river makes Dominic straight. It's the 6 of diamonds, also bringing a flush. Miss Leamy checks. Dominic bets small, 88,000. Miss Leamy moves in, shockingly, with bottom set.
He's giving a great price to Nitsche, by the way. Like, Nitsche started with, what, 210K or something?
Something like that.
Yeah, so now it looks like Nitschke's in trouble, right?
Nitsche finds a fold, as you usually should against a flush here, right? Usually they have a flush. So, Dave Hill says, you said Nitsche gets unlucky that he was priced in to call the string bet on the turn, but he was the one who pointed it out, presumably hoping for that exact ruling. Yes, it was a string bet, but it's a bit dirty of Nitsche to mention it just to get a cheap river. I also wonder if it turns his hand face up as being on some kind of a draw. Point out a string bet, get a cheap price, don't raise on a draw-heavy board. The other guy doesn't pick up on it, but a better player definitely would. No way Nitsche has a made hand on the turn after that. So this is 2 points.
Let's address the second one first.
Okay.
I think you're absolutely right about the second one. I think it looks a lot like Nitsche has a draw and he wants to see a river for cheap.
I mean, if Nitschke's got a set here, right? he's not going to say, hey, that's a string bet, right? He's going to let the guy bet as much as possible.
But that doesn't actually matter. If you want it to be less and you're going to fold if it's more, you might as well be able to draw to your hand, so call it the string bet. I don't think there's anything you can do to make it more plus EV to get the string bet not called.
I don't think there's anything scummy about this.
No, I agree.
A lot of people mentioned this in the comments as thinking it was somehow an angle by Dominique.
It's not an angle.
I mean, if anything, the reason why that rule exists is so the person making the bet can't angle, right? So you can't put out some and then look and see what the response and then put out more or not. I mean, that's the idea.
Those are the rules. I see nothing wrong with what Dominic did. It's within the rules. If the guy doesn't know the rules or how to bet properly, that's his fault. It's not Dominic's fault, and Dominic should be able to benefit from that as a guy who knows the rules.
I mean, this isn't a $10 buy-in at your local bar, right? This is the Premier League. This is high buy-in stuff. It's totally reasonable for Dominic to ask for the rules to be enforced.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think his name is Dominic, not Dominique.
Well, it's one of those, for sure.
He's not Dominique Wilkins. That guy could dunk, though. That guy's a good dunker.
He was.
Next up, we have, can Phil Hellmuth talk his way out of this one? Turns out this time he can.
He can.
Although that is not always the case. If you want to check out that hand, click right up there. It's a weird hand. It's the first hand of the big game session where Phil decides to bet pot pre-flop because it's a pot limit game with ace-6. Just decides to take over the table, I guess.
Let's do this.
Antonio Esfandiari flats out of the small blind with 2 jacks. Tony G's in the big blind with who cares.
I think 6-7, but whatever.
9-6 of hearts. Calls. 10-10-8 flop. Antonio decides to lead. Tony folds. Phil raises big.
Interesting.
Pretty interesting. Antonio calls as he kind of has to once he leads here.
Yeah.
The turn is a low, meaningless card.
It's a 3 of spades, actually.
Right. Check. Phil bets again. This time about half pot, something like that.
Something like that.
Antonio calls. The river is another low card.
5 of diamonds.
5 of diamonds. Antonio checks. Phil bets 22K into a large pot, like 70 or 80K, something like that. And he says some stuff that we really liked. He did some table talk that actually really seemed to work for him.
It did.
And Antonio, getting this incredible price with pocket jacks here, ended up folding.
Just throws it away.
Yeah.
All right. T. Gwynn says, and this is in quotes, OMG, he bet small, he wants to be paid off, he's got value. OMG, he bet small, he wants to make it look like he wants to pay off. Bluff. OMG, he bet small, he wants to make it look like he wants to make it look like he wants to be paid off. OMG, 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 end quote. How all these discussions go. How is this not going around in circles? Should you not just pay him off if you have a good hand at some point? Shrug.
This is a very good point.
It is a fair point.
Yeah, so this is something that we've brought up multiple times, something that Daniel Negreanu said to us when we interviewed him one time. When you're bluffing the river, you have to kind of make a decision. Are you playing against a field player or a mathy player? If you're giving the mathy player too good of a price, he's just going to call. Yeah. It's just going to happen. It doesn't matter what the price is against the field player if it's a pure field player. They're going to try to figure out if the story makes sense and then make their decision based on that.
Right.
This is a mathy comment, right?
This is, I don't even know if this is a mathy comment. This is just, it's an anti-feel comment. Yeah. So fair enough, fair enough.
Right, and we're generally anti-feel, the way field playing is. And I generally agree, the price should matter a lot. Of course, it does mean that there are fewer bluffs when you bet small, and there's no way around that.
There should be fewer bluffs anyway, right? It doesn't mean there are, and in fact, this case, this is a bluff. But Phil's probably taking into account his history and how he bets when he has it, which often is small.
Yeah.
He also does bet small with bluffs, though, too, in
he does.
fairness. I think this is a pretty good point, and there is a lot of circular reasoning here where you can sort of use almost any piece of evidence to justify things at a poker table, and that's one of the problems with poker, but one of the beautiful things about it, too, is actually sitting there and trying to figure out what does it mean when this person does it in this situation.
Right, having that player-dependent thing is really what makes poker great, because if it's just a bunch of numbers being thrown at you on a screen, which kind of online poker kind of is, I guess, unless you really know the player. So I guess it's the beauty of live poker, is that there's physical tells, there's different players who you've seen do different things, you have to react differently to them, you have history with them. That's what makes the game great, and that's what makes the common people want to play the game, right? Mm-hmm. Not all the superstars like Antonio Esfandiari, who I guess is a bit of a field player to make this fold.
I think so. I mean, if Antonio was doing the math part of it at all, one, he'd be saying, I'm getting a good price. Two, he'd be saying, I am near the very top of my range here, and I'm getting a good price. It's just absurd for me to fold this hand in this spot, and he wouldn't think anything more of it. He'd just throw the chips in. Yeah. But he thinks he's got a good read on Phil. He probably usually does.
Yeah.
But Phil may have just gone one level deeper this time.
Phil got him this time.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean this is a good decision for Phil even. I don't know if this is usually going to work, especially once Antonio saw this on TV. But it worked this time.
It did work this time, and I do like this comment. It makes a good point.
Me too.
Yeah.